I like bad movies. At least I am rather fond of films that critics say are bad, though that isn't always the same thing. Critics dislike a lot of movies simply because they're easy to understand. Obscurity equals art in their world. Now I have to make a distinction between good bad movies and bad bad movies. These are often distinguished by their intent. Ed Wood never intentionally made a bad movie, but just about all of them turned out that way. He always believed he was making a masterpiece. In the hands of a better director, some of his scripts might have been a little worse than a lot of other B-movies. In Wood's hands, they were often so horrible as to be quite entertaining, once you got over the initial feeling that you weren't supposed to be laughing at what Wood had intended as serious drama. One Wood epic, the silly, overblown crime drama Jailbait, has the unintentional distinction of being just about the only film where you can hear an undubbed Steve Reeves. Contrary to rumor, there's nothing at all wrong with his voice, which would have fit his Hercules character just fine. More likely he didn't dub his own voice in the American version of these movies because the American distributor wasn't inclined to bring Reeves over to loop the part when he could get an anonymous voice actor for a lot less. It is, in fact, probably a safe bet that the only reason Clint Eastwood and Eli Wallach sound like themselves in those spaghetti westerns is that their voices were already known from TV and other movies. When Arnold Schwarzenegger, then being billed as Arnold Strong, did Hercules in New York, no one knew what he really sounded like. And the producers figured his accent would be too hard to understand. Or else they figured a Greek demigod should sound British or something. So his voice was dubbed. Curiously, playing the DVD with the undubbed voice track somehow makes it seem quite a bit less silly. It's still pretty bad, though. My personal candidate for worst movie ever made is the Lou Ferrigno epic Sinbad of the Seven Seas. It has its moments, even so. The princess is exquisite, and John Steiner's turn as the evil vizier Jafar is so completely over the top as to establish a new standard for intentional overacting. One of the more curious things about this film is just how obvious it seems that Disney's animators had seen it, given the striking resemblance of the Caliph and Jafar to their counterparts in Aladdin. This movie might have been a little better if the producers hadn't run out of money before it was completed, but probably not. After all, the Poe story it was based on purports to be an additional story told by Scheherazade that was so awful that the king changed his mind and had her executed after all. So probably the movie was always going to be pretty bad. Which brings up what I suppose we should call intentionally bad movies. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes is a prime example. Sometimes it's funny, and it's always just a little too obvious that they were trying to make a bad movie. These things are always funnier when the intent, as in the Ed Wood classics, was a horribly failed attempt to make a good movie. The sequel, Return of the Killer Tomatoes, was better, but with that one you got a young George Clooney acting silly, and Terry Weigel taking her clothes off, so there was more to distract you from the foolishness.